Economics is the government's battleground of choice, so the man to speak to is the Treasurer. He joined me a short time ago. Wayne Swan, welcome.
Good to be here, Chris.
Can you tell us just at the outset, because you have signalled that the economy is going to be the battleground for this year, what is the proper role for government in the economy?
Well, the proper role for the government is to provide the climate for the investment, to create the jobs, to create the prosperity, so we can spread the opportunities right around the country. And the central task of this government, the central commitment of this government is to create jobs, and not just any jobs, good quality jobs, decent pay and working conditions, and to make sure that people have the capacity to look after themselves so they can get access to affordable health, education and housing. So the central commitment of any government is to provide the framework, to get the private investment, to create the prosperity which generates the jobs for the future and the opportunities for our kids and for our grandkids.
But when you look at the way this government acts in the economy, and let's look at two different things, one on climate change, where you decide that market mechanism is the best way to go, and another one on the NBN, where you decide the government solely should go it alone on delivering broadband. Doesn't that send a confused message?
Not at all. These are two fundamental microeconomic reforms, and they're really big changes in our economy. They're up there with all of the great changes that were made in the Hawke and Keating era. Just take pricing carbon. The most cost-effective, least cost way of dealing with dangerous climate change and carbon pollution is to put in place a market mechanism. Now, it's a tough reform politically, but it's a fundamental reform, because you can't be a first world, first-class economy in the 21st century unless you're substantially powered by clean energy. That's why we've gone for the market mechanism there, but completely different when it comes to superfast broadband. The fact is that we were advised by a variety of committees that a market-type provider wouldn't work in the first instance. So we are investing the money to put the wholesale system in place, and that's really solved one of the big problems we've had in our economy,
sure,
which has been the role of
That
Telstra.
program started out at $4.7 billion and ended up being in excess of $42 billion.
Well, that's not exactly the way it occurred at all. We had a series of reports.
In 2007 you went with a $4.7 billion plan, it inflated to $42 billion.
Well, it was a completely different plan, but we took the best advice from the Treasury and all of our advisors, and their advice was very, very clear, that we would have to make the investment if we wanted this to happen. And this is a fundamental reform to lift productivity in our economy, particularly important to regional areas. This is some of the most essential productivity improvement that we can put in place to make sure that we maximise the opportunities for this economy in the 21st century.
When you intervene, why do you intervene, for example, in the car industry and not in the retail industry?
Well, we are putting in place a variety of different measures. It's horses for courses, and of course up until now there's been a bipartisan commitment for co-investment in the car industry. Why do we think the car industry is important? Because we think it provides, in particular, vital skills and innovation for other sectors of our industry. I think it is absolutely essential for this country to make sure that we've got a very competitive and highly productive car industry. It brings many other benefits to our country, but we've got sectors in this country that are doing it tough, particularly with a higher dollar, and a variety of other responses.
Why did you cut the Green Car Innovation Fund to meet your budget surplus if it's so important to invest in the car industry?
We have changed our spending over time, we've changed our priorities, but we have the fundamental commitment to auto, unlike the Liberals, who are going to slash...
All they're saying is they're going to spend less, and what you would do is spend more, and we're still going to see jobs lost in that industry, aren't we?
Well, what we have to do is take into account what's evolving globally here. There's a global supply chain. The industry doesn't stay still. And as we go about our co-investment with the industry, and we're working with the industry, we want to make sure that we keep a highly productive and competitive car industry here, and it's good value for money. Our investment here in the car industry is modest compared to what happens in so many other developed economies.
With the surplus, you're asking people to take you on trust that you will deliver a surplus, not this May when you announce it, but sometime next year when it's finally accounted for. Why should people trust this government on its word?
Because we've got a track record of getting the big economic decisions right. We got the response to the global recession right. And when we put in place that stimulus, we announced our exit strategy. And our exit strategy was that we would apply fiscal restraint when growth returned to trend. And growth has returned to trend, and we're on track to deliver a surplus in 2012-13, and that's had the big tick from organisations like the IMF, the OECD, and of course the World Bank. They understand what ends this government is looking for here. That is strict fiscal policy, with a fiscal stance that matches the trends in the
But isn't
economy.
the Prime Minister's track record that she promised there would be no carbon tax and circumstances had changed and there was one? She said to Andrew Wilkie that there would be mandatory pre-commitment and circumstances changed and there wasn't that. So why should people take the government at its word?
I don't accept any of the assumptions behind that question.
Not assumptions, they're facts.
Well, and the comparisons are just completely skewed. The fact is that we announced a fiscal strategy and we've been applying it for the last few years, and we've been doing it with rigour, and of course it has been very difficult. And at every step of the way that we've been doing it, we've been getting the big tick. And of course we've now got the big tick from the three major international credit rating agencies. The gold-plated AAA rating, not something that Peter Costello and John Howard ever had. And that reflects the fact that this government has been handling fiscal policy very well.
Treasurer, why not tell Kevin Rudd to go out and have a press conference and say that he has no intention of ever challenging the Prime Minister?
Well, because I've talked about this at some length over the last couple of days, and I've made the point that so much of the publicity, so much of the commentary is just a huge beat-up, and I don't intend to add to it.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. His people and himself have been involved in feeding this particular story. He could have ended it today. He came out of church, people were asking about it. Why can't he just stop and say, I'm not challenging?
Well, I've taken Kevin Rudd at his word. He said he's not interested in doing it. He said he's not involved. That's it.
Why can't he hold a press conference and say that?
Well, I think the most important thing to do here is for us to get on with the job of maintaining a strong economy and putting in place these big, important, long-term reforms that are going to deliver prosperity in this country. And that's what I'm concerned with.
Do you fear, though, that people will make the assessment of if it appears that you can't run your own party, you shouldn't be running the government?
I think what really matters at the end of the day is that we've got the policy settings in place which keep our economy strong and provide the opportunity in terms of jobs, educational opportunities, skill opportunities and so on for all of our people. That's what we're concerned with.
Wayne Swan, thank you.
Thank you.